Not started yet with the meeting. No, we're not started yet with the meeting. We're just waiting for, oh, the quorum just walked in.
All right.
Here you go, Bill.
Thank you. A trucker on that fence out
I
there.
You extra staff. So are we hitting record?
Yes, we just started recording.
Just started recording. Okay. So welcome everyone to the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council regular meeting. Today, Tuesday, September 17, 2024. We're starting here at 12:03. We're meeting physically in the Atlantic Conference Room at Hall of Administration Main Plaza here at County of Ventura. And then we also have a few people online, so welcome. And let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Vice Chair White,
Here.
Councilmember Sam,
Here.
Chair Snuff,
Here.
Councilmember Ventura. Maybe writing a little later. Councilmember Perez here. Councilmember Varela. Councilmember Keith Corolla.
Present.
Councilmember Para. Councilmember Camarillo
Here.
and Councilmember Pro. He did let me know that he was going to miss today's meeting.
Okay, all right, so we have a quorum. So let's do our pledge of allegiance. And Bill, can you still do the pledge of allegiance?
Class does the pledge. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is the approval of minutes from April 16th, 2024.
That was the last time.
I believe so. That was a little something. So if anybody needs a hard copy, oh, they were here. But did you all have a chance to take a look at the minutes? So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and second.
Okay, a motion to approve and seconded. Could we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair White,
Yes.
Councilmember Sam,
Yes.
Chair Snuff,
Yes.
Councilmember Ventura. Councilmember Perez. Yes. Councilmember Varela. Councilmember Keith Corolla.
Yes.
Councilmember Para. Councilmember Camarillo
Yes.
and Councilmember Crush.
Motion was passed then. Let's move on to item number 5, public comments for items not on the agenda. So we'll entertain any comments from the public. So seeing a few people in the audience here, no comment from the public. Anyone online, you can take yourself off of mute or raise your hand. Okay, seeing no one would like to add anything here. Let's move on then to correspondence agenda. There were no items on correspondence agenda. That's item number 6. So item number 7, regular agenda, is where we receive an update from the county executive office staff.
Apologies, everyone.
Hi there, nice stuff. So,
Yeah, here for the meeting.
so Heather, take it away.
I apologize for the lack of presentations today. It was a busy month and we had a couple presenters that didn't work out. But we have some administrative items and an update on our CEO update. And so currently, or as of this summer, the general plan had just designated disadvantaged communities, Saticoy, El Rio, Del Norte, and Piru. And then our general plan, just to refresh everyone, Designated disadvantaged communities or DDCs are areas within census tracts that score 70% or greater as identified in Cal Enviro screen are areas with median household incomes at or below 80% of the statewide median income are with household incomes at or below the threshold designated as low income by the Department of Housing and Community Development's list of state income limits. During the July 23rd meeting, our RNA planning staff presented to the board and the board approved a general plan amendment to incorporate 3 new designated disadvantaged communities to the general plan. And they include Ventura, Star Plain, and unincorporated Santa Paula. And so we go to the next slide. So this is for Ventura. Go to the next slide. And so I just wanted to point out that all of these multiple neighborhood pockets and each grouping is collectively considered one this designated disadvantaged community. The last one, that's unincorporated Santa Paula.
So those border areas, the yellow that you're describing, are those identified as like different census tracts?
Yes.
Okay.
I put a link in the
Actually, I'm going to weigh in. This is Shelley Sussman. Sorry. I just want to clarify, they're not all different census tracts. Cal EnviroScreen scores based on census tract, but not all of these. I'm not sure exactly which census tracts these are. I don't have that at my fingertips, but they are not all different census tracts. Like the in the slide you have up here, this is likely the same census tract.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry to jump in, Heather. I just want to.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep. Okay.
A link to the July 23rd hearing is in the meeting packet if you want to review the hearing or see the public comments or review the board letter. Questions?
I can also answer. I've tried to answer any questions. This was a project in my section that we took forward. So if you have any basic questions, I can probably address them here.
Can I ask a question? Yes. What are the disadvantaged communities? I mean, so what benefits do these communities get when they are designated disadvantaged?
Shelley, would you like to take that question, or I could try to answer it, but you might do a better job. Did you hear the question? It's what are the advantages of designating communities as a designated disadvantaged community within the general plan?
Mute.
Sorry about that. There are a number of policies in the general plan that speak to designated disadvantaged communities. There's a range of different actions that apply. So for example, noticing, there may be additional noticing if you have a project in a disadvantaged community. There may be additional health screening requirements if you have a particularly intense industrial use that you're hoping to permit in a DDC. There are grant opportunities that apply to DDCs. There's additional outreach typically that is recommended for designated disadvantaged communities. There's a range, and the board packet, and I can try to find it maybe while you are talking about other issues, but the board packet did include a very handy table that identified all of the applicable policies and the various categories that they fall into. So that is available if anybody's interested in taking a look at it. I want to point out that this has been the culmination in July for that final board hearing was the culmination of quite a lengthy process for this project. We went out into the community and did outreach, in all of these locations, Oxnard Plain, Ventura, and Santa Paula. We had planning commission hearings. We had 2 board hearings. So it was a long process, and it culminated essentially in the board agreeing or approving the DDC boundaries as Heather has them on these slides.
To add the way Shelley had mentioned about grant opportunities. So we have the Ventura County Regional EV Blueprint, and we have mapped out all the disadvantaged communities, low-income designated census tracts. For EV infrastructure, we have that mapped out, and then we can identify all the gaps using like a buffer, and then it helps us prioritize where we would like to put EV infrastructure as well as outreach. And so at least our group really includes a lot of outreach and putting the charging stations, trying to get it into our rural communities that might not have charging infrastructure, disadvantaged communities, et cetera. So we use this information a lot.
It's for decision making.
Points also. So we applied for the CalRecycle grants for the development of the Lehman Arrow Project Compost Center, and there was a community-based benefits program. So aligning that around the disadvantaged communities adds points to your scoring system to help you get the grant. So these designations are extremely important. And they're not just in the county, there's also city designated disadvantaged communities. And when you overlay the maps, which would be nice to see, the overlays between the city of Santa Paula, city of Oxnard, which is heavy areas of disadvantaged communities, along with the county, they kind of butt up to each other. So it's a pretty big deal that this is in this climate plan.
And sometimes it depends on, there's lots of different definitions used for disadvantaged communities, but sometimes it just identifies a community that may need more infrastructure, say flood control measures and stuff like that. So it really helps with planning grants and stuff.
Well, we appreciate the detail of the work. Thanks.
Thank you, planning staff.
Do you want me to try to pull up the table? And I can just sort of show you what it looks like at some point when I pull it up, or
Sure, you referenced it, yeah, so
okay. I can send it to Heather also and she can distribute it. Would that be better?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Okay, so back to the CEO update for program COSLL, which is our Greenhouse Gas Reduction Policy Enhancement Program that's identified in the general plan. On October 17th, RMA Planning will present a recommendation to modify the language in the general plan program COSLL to the Ventura County Planning Commission. And so that program language is attached in the program update, but RMA Planning and CO Sustainability are requesting this amendment so that the proposals and recommendations from the Climate Emergency Council, they do not need to be presented to the Planning Commission prior to the Board of Supervisor. I think y'all may know this causes a couple months delay, or at least a month to 2 to 3 months delay before it can go to the Board of Supervisors. And then CEO Sustainability would like to propose changing the purpose of the Climate Emergency Council, where now it says your recommendations. I feel that y'all also, besides making recommendations, advise on programs that are presented to y'all from other agencies or partners. And so we just wanted to add that language in there. And so the attachment has the strike through and it's up on the screen and underlined. Any questions on that? Do you want to go to the next slide for the? These are just the policy topic areas, right? There you go.
And Vice Chair White has a comment.
I think it's a good move to change the language from developing these, since we're not a technical body, developing these programs and policies to recommending. I think that's a good move. The one thing that's still in there, and maybe it was there originally, is no later than 2025 is the CEC, our group, set to recommend anything to the board, I guess, or at least under COSLL. And what happens if in 2026 or 2028, we have a great idea that we want to recommend to the board? Are we not going to be allowed to do that?
So we kept that in there because we weren't sure, a lot of it plans on, we appreciate the feedback and the recommendations. And so I think that we would like to keep the Climate Emergency Council, you know, maybe not meet regularly, but as needed. But I think a lot of it depends on what happens with our general plan update, the inventory update that'll happen in 2025 to see where we're at, to see how frequently we need the Climate Emergency Council to meet. So we just left it in there as is because it's kind of up in the air. We wanted to see what happened with our inventory.
So it also too is, I believe that for us serving on this board, it was like a 2-year plan. So for the first 2 years, we had, you know, the recommendations needed to come before the expiration of the second year, so that this technically would be the next 2 years. So I think that's why you have 2025. I mean, that's how I'm reading it. Just because I remember, you know, when you and I first, we were the initial group here, we had up until like the end of that second year to bring anything to the board through the process of planning and then the board of supervisors. So
One of the conversations we've had here is we need an inventory to know where we're at relative to the target of the reductions that are in the state plan and in the county general plan, climate action plan. And so we're kind of waiting for that inventory. And if the inventory says, hey, we're already there, then there's nothing left to do. But if we're not there, if the inventory says we're way behind, we need to do more, then that would trigger, I would think, this committee to sit down and make some recommendations. So hopefully we're not going to be precluded from doing that by this word no later than 2025. So I would strike out, if it were I would strike out 2025 no later than 2025. If the board wants recommendations.
We'll make note of that.
But I'd also like to comment about the policies versus programs, because it's confusing. You have sub-programs identified through the implementation of 52 policies, but we don't see the link between the programs and the policies. And then in this handout, you have 27 policy topic areas. Are those part of the 52? Did the 52 get filtered out the 27 and how many programs have been implemented that tie to those policies, which will ultimately tie to the inventory.
A lot of that is in our E-CAP. Morel, our former CEO of sustainability staff, did a presentation on it that shows the programs and the policies. The linkage is in the E-general plan. You can click on each policy and it has the programs that relate to it, and vice versa. If you click on the program, it will show the policies that relate to it. And then it shows the progress we've made on each program and policy. So
So as this body advises and recommends typically on policy,
policy or programs.
Could be either one, huh?
so or as a council typically, in roles like this, you're focusing on policy, which then turns into the development of programs done by staff and the CEO of the county. I don't think you want that much overreach from us. But we need to understand, I guess, better the policy, programs, and priorities. So that we're all kind of on the same sheet of music a little. We feel a little bit disjointed in my opinion.
So originally, when we were brought together, there's this plan, right, that, it incorporates climate emergency in it. And there were 27 items that didn't necessarily have any kind of measurement so we were tasked to do that, but it didn't say that we couldn't go and recommend anything for anything else, right? So these are the 27 policy topic areas.
And then, like Heather mentioned earlier, the climate action plan that Morel developed, it has the programs in there, and it also has information on where we're at with implementation of those programs. So you'll be able to see kind of the way it's outlined in there, and I have it here on my laptop, but it's outlined on there with like percentage complete, if any have been initiated or not. The information on the climate action plan website is all the climate action plan policies within the general plan. So that can give you a little bit of insight on what hasn't been initiated, what has, and what that program specifically is. And then that way, if you have any questions as well, you can bring it back to us and we can help inform on why maybe some programs haven't been initiated or kind of what it is that's kind of keeping us from getting there quite yet, and then which programs aren't complete or majority of the way complete.
And how many of our policies are being driven by the state climate action plans policies?
I don't have to get back to you on that.
Because those create programs or mandates that we're having to follow today. So, in Ackerman, working in 15 counties, I see a lot of climate action plans in every county. And it's kind of interesting to see how now even the federal level is starting to catch up to California's mandates. Whereas now all the counties are developing their own climate action plans, and then guess what? Now the cities are creating their own. So there is
Like for here, the cities that have been part of all this collaborative work that we've done on different grants or that you have all done, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with the grant program that I'll talk about in a little bit as well, is that climate pollution reduction grants. That's something that EPA put out to help bring more states, cities, counties, even territories and tribal communities to get climate action plans to get us all moving forward on doing more climate action within our jurisdictions.
And so for the timing of the next kind of, I believe we start collecting data. We're going to be updating the inventory, but to your question about the policy and program implementation, we start collecting that data at the beginning of each year. So we collected it for 2024. I think January through maybe March, we'll be collecting it for, we collected it in 2024 for 2023. And I guess in the early spring, we'll be collecting it for our progress over 2024. And then that gets presented to the board in late spring time, and then presented to them. And we can send the link to the general plan and the climate action too. Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I would just a comment, one of the recommendations that this committee has made was electrification of county facilities. And that recommendation went to the planning commission and they passed it on to the board, and the board approved it unanimously, actually. And so that's an example of something that's not on this list of 27 or 52 or however many there are. And in my opinion, that's the kind of thing that we're hopefully going to be recommending if we identify something that's important that's not being done. I've always thought that these 27 or 52 policy enhancements are kind of make work for us. And I always use the example of permeable pavement. And I seriously doubt that anybody, whether it's our committee or the county or a consultant, is going to be recommending a significant greenhouse gas reduction program based on permeable pavement. But that's just an example. And I think we want to keep the door open for any and all ideas that we might have as a group to recommend to the board if things are not being done that we can identify. And I think the focus on these 27 is misplaced myself.
But I think if I can add a comment to what you just said, is that all this has been driven by 2006 Climate Action Plan for the state. And it only focused on 5 industry sectors: transportation, energy, wastewater, and agriculture. So from that, they created the scoping plans that developed all these mandates that we're following today across the whole state. And then when the counties do their plans, they have to feed into that. So permeable pavement, they may feed into stormwater, but we're not sure what the greenhouse gas impacts of that are. So the state focused on 2 major ones to get a big reduction, and that was transportation and energy. Ag's going to be last. So there need to be policies coming forward on how carbon farming becomes a policy in the plan, as Santa Barbara County just passed a carbon farming plan as part of their climate action plan to focus on that last bucket. Electrifying all the facilities, that's part of the energy piece. And then the transportation piece, which is electrifying cars and other programs. So a scoring system from the inventory becomes really the focal point on where you get the low hanging fruit.
We actually do have a program in the general. Sorry, I'm working at home. I'm sorry. We have a program in the general plan on carbon farming. I think there actually might be more than one. County shall collaborate, just for example, county shall collaborate with UC Cooperative Extension to encourage and facilitate carbon farming projects, including development of demonstration projects and site-specific carbon farm plans to guide implementation of carbon farming practices throughout the county when feasible. So it is mentioned in the general plan anyway.
One area that has not been included in the original climate action plan or the original inventory is taking the emissions pie and putting in a slice of pie for the oil and gas industry, which is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, both CO2 and methane. methane leaks. And hopefully that's going to get rectified when this new inventory gets done. Is there, I mean, Victor, maybe you know about this as the consultant working on specifically adding oil and gas to the inventory?
It's not something that we have discussed, but I can bring back that information to them. We meet with them on a bi-weekly basis, so we can discuss kind of what can be done there.
I mean, there are, I haven't looked at all of them, Phil, in the time that you just made your comment, but if you go to Appendix B in the general plan, I just did a search for oil and there's 53 references. So stationary sources associated with oil and gas production, off-road vehicles related to oil drilling, drill rigs, lifts, pumps, generators, those were in the inventory.
It's not identified as a category, Shelley, for emissions. Yes, there are little pieces here and there, but it's really not been included anywhere that I've ever seen, and I've been involved in it from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm not sure the methane, as you say, was captured specifically in its own category.
That's a good example, yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that, Phil. I'll bring those comments back to Rincon and see what it is that can be done there. Because we also want to make sure we stay consistent as well when we're providing this update. To be able to compare the two inventories and see what progress has been made.
Any other questions or comments? So.
Continuing, due to the expansion of the designated disadvantaged communities and the proposed modifications to COS-LL that will be presented to the Planning Commission in October. This will require amending resolution 20-124 and the associated climate emergency council bylaws will go from 10 members to 13 members. It'll just amend the wording of the purpose a little bit, and then we'll remove that recommendation. Or we'll propose removing that recommendation to going to the planning commission prior to presenting to board of supervisors. So again, there'll be a item at the planning commission that I believe is scheduled for October 17th, and then we'll coordinate with RMA staff on when we present that to the board of supervisors and update y'all on the timing. Okay, moving on, just for the terms for the Climate Emergency Council, the resolution and the bylaws state that each member has a 2-year term for the supervisorial districts and designated disadvantaged community representatives. Their term begins on November 1st and then will end on October 30th of even numbered years, so 2024. And then, yeah, for the at-large members, theirs begins December 1st and it ends on November 30th. So we'll be working with our board of supervisors on the appointments for the supervisorial districts and the designated disadvantaged communities. And again, the disadvantaged communities will go from 3 to 6. And then for the at-large positions, we'll just open up a similar application like we did for the last couple rounds.
So we'll have 13 versus 10.
Correct. Lucky number 13.
You need a bigger table. We are.
Yes. We can add 2 more tables at least. Okay, any questions?
Any questions for Heather?
So more information coming on that. the REACH code back in April, we presented on, Berkeley decision and how it affected the county of Ventura's REACH code. There's a little write-up in your program or your CEO update about the Berkeley decision. I can also resend around it. April 16th meeting packet that has a more in-depth write-up about the Berkeley decision. But because of that, RMA Building and Safety has enforcement of the county's REACH code back in March of 2024. And then unenforceable provisions of the county's REACH code they needed to be repealed. So building and safety staff investigated different approaches to reduce the use of natural gas in buildings that are not addressed by the Berkeley decision. And on September 10th, they presented the first reading of the ordinance to repeal the mandatory all electric requirement for certain buildings. So our REACH code. And then instead to institute voluntary compliance with all electric requirements that includes a 50% reduction in the expedited plan review surcharge. I think the expedited plan review surcharge is a 30% fee, so it'd be a 50% reduction of that 35% fee that people pay extra to expedite their plan review. I included the initial presentation by RMA staff at their July 23rd Board of Supervisors meeting, and then the September 10th, a link to the September 10th board meeting for that item. And then they'll do the second reading of the ordinance during the September 24th board meeting.
You know, I have a comment on this, having followed it here in the county and also in the city of Ojai. Ojai had adopted a REACH code as well as many cities around the state have done. And because of the Berkeley decision from the Restaurant Association going to the state Supreme Court ruled that Berkeley didn't have the authority to do that. I mean, their logic was stretched because it was based on appliance efficiencies, which is a federal mandate. But at any rate, in response to that, some of the cities around the state are looking at alternative ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from buildings that the REACH code was dealing with. For example, looking at the health impact of toxic emissions from cooking in kitchens that release many pollutants, benzene and carbon monoxide, and so there are approaches being taken by other jurisdictions around the state that still go to defending electrification mandates in building codes. And I think that Ventura County should be doing the same thing rather than making it just a voluntary thing. It's admirable that they're reducing fees, but it seems like staff and our group should be recommending that building and safety look at other ways of getting to the end, which is electrification of buildings, because it's really a no-brainer. And I don't see that here. They're not doing that, are they?
I don't want to speak for building and safety staff, but I believe some of the thinking was they wanted to see what the state was going to release for their proposed next update to the building code. And I think they released it late last week after this was presented to the Board of Supervisor. And so I would assume that building and safety staff will be reviewing what's in the new proposed building code update. They did say that this will be, I believe it says it will sunset. Yes, the voluntary incentive program sunsets on December 31st of 2025.
when the new code goes
New
into
code
effect.
starts on January 1st.
So
So
is the expectation that the new code will require electrification?
I have not had time to review the new code, but
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to review it quite yet,
I
but
know there's something about heat pumps. But we'll have to get back to you because we just haven't reviewed what's in the new.
But anyway, that would be my suggestion, that the county look at what other jurisdictions are doing around the state to keep alive the idea of beach codes, building electrification in a way that doesn't contradict the Berkeley decision. Because there may well be some, I think San Luis Obispo is one that maybe did that.
We planning and RMA staff along with sustainability did get some presentations from City of SLO as well as I think City of Santa Cruz. And then also participated in a Clean Power Alliance Reach Code workshop and stuff. So we have been learning about what other jurisdictions are doing, and building and safety was part of that. And it seemed like this was the approach that they wanted to take, but we'll continue learning about what all the other cities are doing.
Well, I think you need to, I think you need to present that to the board. And say, hey, here's what other jurisdictions are doing on this matter. You don't have to get rid of what was a very powerful ordinance. Because there are alternatives.
So it
So will
sounds,
somebody do that? And when this going back to the board, when?
It'll go to this for the second reading of the ordinance on the next Tuesday, the 24th.
so it sounds like RMA Building and Safety Division is taking the lead.
Yes.
So are you gonna have input or not?
We can share comments with the building and safety staff, but they're taking the leadership, so.
Questions on that part?
For grants, I'll hand it over to Victor to start off with a CPRG update.
yeah, so I mentioned earlier the County Pollution Reduction Grants Program. Just as a reminder to everybody, the County of Ventura Sustainability Division is taking the lead for the planning grant that we received for EPA for this program. We completed our priority climate action plan on March 1st and applied for implementation grant funds as well. And we're now working on the comprehensive climate action plan, which will be due to EPA by December 1st, 2025. It actually was originally 2 years from when we received the grant award, which would have been in August of 2025. So we got a bit of an extension there to complete the plan. And then also give a brief update on planning grant workshop that EPA set up for all the planning grantees. So I mentioned the implementation grant. So the federal EPA received more than 300 applications requesting approximately $33 billion in funding for the CPRG implementation grant competition. And they only had 4.6 billion available for funding. So for the general competition, EPA selected 25 recipients to be awarded a total of 4.3 billion in funding. The remaining was separated out for a competition for territories and tribes. So unfortunately, our application was not one of the 25 selected. And just as a reminder as well, so we had requested about $48 million to expand a 3C Rents Home Energy Savings Program for the county, install regional electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and launch an e-bike incentive program targeted towards farm workers and low-income and disadvantaged communities in Ventura County. We did receive a debrief from EPA on what some of the weaknesses were in our application. We actually did pretty well, all things considered. Mainly, we were docked points on how much reductions would have resulted in these programs. So just how it compared to the other applicants that were in our tier. So there's that, and actually also wanted to give you an update on who was awarded. So the South Coast Air Quality Management District was the only jurisdiction in California that received funding, and they were awarded nearly the entire amount or funding cap at nearly $500 million.
No surprise.
Yeah. So they were one of the lucky 25.
I mean, I think the advancement of California and where we're at, who's gonna win here? I mean, it's the rest of the country that's doing nothing. That's gonna have the most impact on GHG reductions.
Yeah, and a lot of there was a large emphasis, the amount of points that could be awarded for the actual emissions reductions that could be accomplished by these projects were, that was heavily weighted on the selection process there.
I will say the work that we did, we're part of a statewide collaborative, and so all of the groups that applied to this are working to see how we can reuse all the application materials and work that we all put into this. So that's the California Climate and Energy Coalition. And so a lot of jurisdictions did put a lot of effort into this, and we're all a little disappointed we didn't get funding, but
Yeah, and just to put things into a little perspective as well, is there were, I believe it was 9 metropolitan statistical areas that received planning grant funds in California, and the state of California also received planning grant funds. So at least 10 jurisdictions within California applied for funding, but also taking into account that any other jurisdictions that were within the geographic area of those who were awarded planning funds could also apply to implement some of the programs that were in an applicable priority climate action plan. So there were definitely more than just the 10 of us that applied for planning grant or implementation grant funds as well.
it's had one big winner.
Well, the coalition summarized all of those grants into a document that highlights probably some of these new ideas that were submitted as a group.
I'll have to see, I'm not sure what. We just started, cause this is all, we
This
just
is
met.
very, very fresh.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'll bring that up at our next coalition. We meet monthly, and so I'll see if they're going to summarize all the work we did that can be shared. I'll follow up.
Now, how often does this grant come up? This is the first time,
So
right?
this is the first and likely only time that these grant funds will become available. EPA really wanted to get these funds out as quickly as possible. We had a very short turnaround time from when the PCAP was published and when the implementation grant was due. The application was due on April 1st, and I mentioned the PCAP was completed on March 1st, and that was the due date for everybody. So we had a month to put everything together. Thankfully, we were working alongside as we were developing the PCAP. And there also was a large emphasis on implementation ready programs. So we really had to sift through the programs and projects that were proposed by the cities as well and see which ones, were truly implementation ready that we could get going as soon as we had hoped we could get funds.
And the funding was from the Inflation Reduction
Yes,
Act.
funding was from the Inflation Reduction Act. EPA is hopeful or would like to do the program again or have more implementation grant funds. But that we'll have to wait and see if that will become available again. But as far as they've been advertising it, the program was only expected to have a one-time grant opportunity for implementation funds. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question on how the county's climate action plan relates to the countywide. Is it consistent?
So what we're doing with with this plan is we're pulling from not just the counties, but also the other existing climate action plans that some of the cities have. So the idea for this regional plan is to really bring everybody together and have everybody be consistent and to give us opportunities for more regional collaboration, especially as we look towards applying for more grant opportunities to align the county and the cities together and make this really a team effort. And understanding that not all the programs that are in the county's climate action plan are what are in the city plan. So really trying to see where there's overlap and if there's any other opportunities that we could include in this regional plan as well. So not limiting ourselves to just what are in the other climate action plans.
So could you say with respect to the county plan that this countywide plan will be as strong as what's in the county's climate action plan?
That's the goal, at least, yeah.
Starting the process
Yes.
of developing the comprehensive climate action plan. But it's amazing, all the cities are participating, and then some of our special districts, transportation districts.
That's a big job.
Yes. And that's a perfect segue into the comprehensive climate action plan. So this is the next deliverable on the planning grant. The first being that priority climate action plan, which only included the three most greenhouse gas emitting sectors. Now we're gonna take that to a wider view and include all the greenhouse gas emitting sectors that were included in the county's climate action plan. And just being a more comprehensive effort. So we got approval from the board to continue working with Rincon Consultants to develop the CCAP. And we did already meet with our CPRG advisory group, which includes all the cities as well as some of the special districts and some community-based organizations as well. So we had that meeting in August. And in that, we just gave a project overview, kind of, because it's been a while since we met up after the implementation grant application was due. So kind of gave a refresher and then had a visioning session. And so members discussed their jurisdictions, areas of interest, and suggested topics to focus on during the planning process. And there was also suggestions to bring in more partners in future CPRG advisory group meetings. For example, there was mentioned that when we have our discussions on the transportation sector, it may be good to bring in Caltrans and other partners, whether they may not be necessarily local jurisdictions. It'd be good to have them in the conversations to make sure that we all align on what's being proposed for the comprehensive climate action plan.
Is the port and the bases included?
The port is, we haven't gotten, we don't have a contact for, or at least I haven't gotten a contact for the base yet, but that's something that we definitely be open to bringing them into the conversation as well.
And so Rincon is a consultant working on this. Is Rincon also doing the county inventory?
So as part of this project, we do have funds available to do the county's inventory. So Recon will be doing the countywide and the update to the county's inventory. So yeah, they'll be doing it as part of this project. Yes.
Okay.
We also are going to be offering the cities an inventory. So the inventories for the cities, although will not contain projections or targets like those that the countywide and the county's update will include. But just something for all the cities to have available as an inventory as well.
And that's 2025 also.
Yeah, 2025 with a 2022 baseline year.
I think there was something posted on a chat maybe, because when you scroll, so I don't know if that's new. Oh, okay.
That was just me
Okay.
saying
Shelley.
I have to leave. I thought it was just gonna go to Heather, so I'm sorry for that.
No worries, Shelley.
So if there are other questions for the planning division, Heather can pass them along to me and we'll get you the information. And I did already send her a copy of that table, so you'll have that. Okay, thanks
Great.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks. Okay, so.
And then for the last part of, sorry, a little bit of a longer update for CPRG. I mentioned I did attend a planning grant workshop that EPA set up. So I joined federal EPA staff and other CPRG planning grantees in Minneapolis earlier this month for a planning grant workshop. And at the workshop, grantees received information on tools and resources to help with CCAP development, CCAP being short for Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. and other opportunity and had opportunities to network with other agencies, seeing what everybody's doing and asking EPA staff questions. And we also received presentations from other federal agencies on available and future funding opportunities that can be utilized for PCAP or CCAP implementation. So just keeping everybody informed on how else we can utilize available funding sources. So IRA funding and others that are coming up that can be utilized.
Thanks.
Good work.
Any questions for Victor?
That's great.
No other questions?
Next, we just wanted to provide a little update on our Ventura County EV ready blueprint status. So we've been implementing the EV blueprint since summer 2021. And then last May, when the Energy Commission and DMV updated data on vehicle registrations and electric vehicle infrastructure, we looked at how we were doing compared to the goals that were identified in the EV blueprint. So the region has more than 40,000 registered zero emission vehicles, and that exceeded our blueprint's projected 2025 goal of a little more than 35,000 ZEVs. So we're moving closer to the state's goal of 5 million zero emission vehicles on our roads by 2030. And for charging infrastructure, the region exceeded our number for DC fast chargers. And for the level 2 charging, there still needs to be work, but that's why we've been applying for grants. And so later this month, we'll be going to the Board of Supervisors for their approval to accept 2 grants, both from Federal Department of Transportation and the California Energy Commission. And that'll be more than $14 million in funding to add 301 level 2 and 42 DC fast charging ports, bringing our region closer to our 2025 goal. And so that's just a snapshot of where we're at with our goal. And that was in your meeting packet, so you can get a more detailed, closer look. And so just to tie it back to the work that we put in for the CPRG implementation grant, we just worked with regional partners from Monterey all the way down to Ventura to submit a charging and fueling infrastructure round 2 grant for DC fast charging along Highway 101 and Highway 1. And so for our region, it's $2.8 million for mostly DC fast chargers, but level 2 charging stations in the city of Oxnard. It's in one of their downtown parking structures, one of the downtown parking structures for the city of Ventura, and then at the Camarillo Amtrak station. And so hopefully we'll hear more if we were awarded. It's a 6-county application, and I thought we did a good job. But hopefully we'll get notified later this year if we were to get those awards. So part of the more than $14 million in funding that we did receive was that Department of Transportation charging and fueling infrastructure round 1 grant. So that was more of a community charging infrastructure, where the second grant application is more focused on corridor charging. Any questions?
Yeah, one question about the planning around the charging systems. Are there any planned co-location of charging stations by current filling stations?
We hope to, so right now, we've mostly been working with our special districts and municipal, all the cities on infrastructure needs. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we have that map where we have existing charging infrastructure, and then identified workplaces, disadvantaged communities, destinations. And so we've been working off the identified gaps using the information we get from our interactive EV blueprint map, as well as input from our regional partners. I think with the community funding, which I mentioned was that $12 million federal grant, we're going to be doing a community plan update for our EV blueprint. And with that update, we'll be involving more private partners for opportunities to put more public charging.
Yes, I travel the state quite a bit and I'm starting to see co-located EV stations along with natural gas stations. And I just recently saw an entire commercial truck EV station. Rich Grove, California. Who would have thought? Like it's in the middle of nowhere. But that's what I'm starting to see as I travel. More co-located, because people are used to going to those areas for fueling. And they just sort of have options, you know, when you get there, because there's McDonald's there.
That's the catch.
Yeah, so we're kind of, we've been taking a phased approach. We created a list of where we have gaps and where our priority locations are. And then, you know, we start trying to tackle as grants become available, our other funding sources. Phase one, check off all these stations, and we have our list. And so we keep trying to apply for more grant funding, and we've been pretty successful. I think we'll be keeping some contractors busy for the next 5 years. So that'll be part of our community update. I mean, in the next couple of years.
More good work, Heather.
Yeah.
It's a team effort.
Yes, thanks, village.
Yes, we have awesome city partners and transportation partners. And then a little small grant we got, but we applied for a Clean Air Day micro grant to launch our EV McWheelie coloring book contest. It was inspired by City of Fillmore Fire Department and Fire Chief Barola and Councilmember Barola. We were at the City of Fillmore was it Earth Day?
Yes.
Seems so long ago now. Earth Day, and we have these EV McWheelie coloring pages, but we don't have a full coloring book. And you had mentioned that you were going to do like a fire safety coloring book.
Wildland fire. Yes.
And so I was like, well, that's cool. So we applied for a Clean Air Day grant and were awarded, and we'll be launching our EV McWheelie coloring book contest on October 2nd, which is Clean Air Day. And we'll be reaching out to junior high, high schools, universities, and community colleges around Ventura County. So if you have any contacts you'd like us to share, we'll probably also reach out to our libraries, and we'll launch it on social media too, so anyone can apply. But there'll be small stipends for the coloring pages or EV McWheelie stories that people submit if we pick them for the coloring book. And we hope to have the coloring book all ready for launch for Earth Day 2025. So
Very good.
Just real quick, there is an update about Earth Day and our Public Works Day recap and the CEO update in the packet. And then, so next week, September 27th through October 6th is National Drive Electric Week. And so we'll be participating in some events for that, along with Ventura County APCD and EV Advocates of Ventura County. Also Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition and Electric Drive 805. And so we'll be launching a flyer that identifies National Drive Electric Week events in all 3 counties, but for the County of Ventura, next Saturday we'll be at the Port Hueneme Banana Festival. And we'll have a booth there alongside of APCD, and we'll have a bunch of our sustainability program material there, and along with some electric vehicle information. And I think the EV Advocates of Ventura County will be having a small EV car show. And then on October 1st, which I believe is a Sunday, there'll be a much larger EV showcase at the Ventura Harbor. The EV Advocates do this every year. And there's tons of different new and converted electric vehicles, so they have a lot of like old race cars that have been converted to EVs, and then there's a plethora of new vehicles that are available. So I encourage y'all to check that out. And then we'll be doing a workplace charging best practices webinar on September 19th. That's along with Electric Drive 805. And we'll just kind of what we learned from trying to install charging stations at workplaces. Any questions?
Any questions for Helen? Comments? Okay. So with that then, are there any public comments to item number 7? Is anybody here in the room? No. Anyone online? Seeing no one raise their hand or speak up, then thank you for that item on the agenda. So let's move on to then item number 8, future agenda items. Since I'm here, we'll start with public comment. So anybody in the public wishing to comment on future agenda items? So no one here in the audience, anybody online? Seeing none, I think that's just one page, right? That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then council member discussions on items for the future. Bill?
Yeah, so as I get to work in lots of counties in California and I get to see lots of different programs driven by policy. A lot of the state mandates that are coming out today also driven by climate action. Most of them are unfunded. So a lot of unfunded great ideas that are being handed down to the communities, counties, and then the jurisdictions within those counties. There's a heavy lean on the private sector to help develop these programs. So I think in our policies, we have to be more clear on how the policies work their way through the system to allow for the private sector to engage, to implement some of these great ideas that are happening, because climate is an opportunity to do something different than the old way. And we've done a pretty good job of leveraging that as we see the laws change in the waste industry and in the ag industry to figure out how to be creative and use the private sector money. So there is a pretty significant private sector climate carbon finance market out there that can be leveraged to help get some of these programs that could help us reduce our greenhouse gases. And they're either an inset reduction or they're an actual capture program or a sequestration program. And that can happen in Ventura County if the policies align with the zoning and the planning to be able to implement these programs instead of hitting a million roadblocks in the process when they try to develop these programs. So I think that in the future should be things that we bring to the table in discussion and presentation to help align our policies with our programs around the inventories. And then I love that you're doing the comprehensive program because there's way too much overlap and work and money being spent when it should be combined, consolidated, and it takes a village to work on climate change. So that is a really smart move because you'll find out you're doing a lot of the same things and you can learn from each other.
I like those 2 suggestions, of involving private and in everything. It's like, and how can private be involved, right? And so I like the other suggestion too of the reduction, capture, and sequestration. It's like, those are the, not check the boxes, but have we covered then all those elements that you would see in those larger ones, right? How it drills down to here. Great ideas.
There's a great company you can go look at called Ventura that's cleaning water in dairies. And it's all paid for by the voluntary carbon markets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we work with them because they clean it with wood chips and worms. And then there's a market for the wood chips and worms that go back into the soil. That's part of the soil rehabilitation programs. So it is a circular economy. You just have to figure out the circle. And there's a lot of other companies in the private sector that are learning how to leverage the carbon finance markets to help fit into these policies that are being created. So it all has to align. And then if you do that, you create economic development at the same time.
Encourage the solutions, yeah.
So you're trying to hit them over the head with a hammer and say, you have to do this. There's a way to do this.
Right.
And it can be profitable for you, for your employees, for the community.
Create
for everyone
jobs.
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, much better approach. Yeah, I agree.
You know, like UCSB is great for their think tanks that they start with all these companies, right? They kind of create them from within and then they launch on their own. That would be great to have
Incubate
that.
program.
Uh-huh. Anything else for future agenda items?
Yeah, I have one. So I currently sit on the CAC, the Community Advisory Committee. And so the sub-awardee for a $500,000 grant by the EPA was awarded to look at air quality monitoring in the city of Fort Wayne, as well as Oxnard. The first meeting that I attended really covered what areas that they would be installing these monitors. And I think it would be great to have them come and present what their research findings are and recommendations to this group. And also, just keep you all informed on the outcomes of these meetings and the development of the work there.
And is this with the county or?
This is
CAC?
Yeah, so the sub-awardee is Sea Frog.
Oh, Sea Frog.
Yeah, Sea Frog is the
Okay.
sub-awardee. And they're looking at air quality with black and brown carbon in the area.
The project also involves the Port of Hueneme, Ventura County Air Pollution Control District, and I believe Channel Islands, or CSU Channel Islands. I sit on the Community Advisory Committee as well. So, yeah, all in that.
When would be a good time for them to present? I'd say maybe early next year. Oh, okay. Yeah. This is just, future, just to get it on the radar now.
Okay.
But this is the work in development also for the public so that they're aware of what's happening in the area.
Okay.
Try to schedule that for this year. For the October meeting, if everyone would like, Athens and Waste Management can present. And then some other topics that we are trying to schedule is environmental justice presentation, and then I can follow up with you if you have any contact, and or I can do some research too to find some presenters on.
I can steer you to the voluntary carbon markets. That's a old one. Yeah, pretty fascinating how that's changing.
Any other suggestions? Future agenda items? I know I just want to mention that one of the tours that we took that was available for anybody to attend were just fascinating. We went to Gold Coast Transit, learned about how it impacts then a business like theirs to go to electric, right? And to go to, to really be mindful of almost, well, I'll just say everything they do, right? And so that was an eye-opening experience. And then to go out to and
Yeah.
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that was fascinating in and of itself, right? I never knew it was down there. Exactly. And everything that goes on there was just, it was like insightful, right? And just to know that everything has to be done in a certain order and created and used for different kinds of applications. It was a fascinating day, and especially the tour that your person gave was wonderful.
Glad you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you.
That's one of 25 centers in California, and it's all being driven by SB 1383 and all the previous climate bills. So that's what I'm saying. I'm a private sector business. And I read the law and I understand what needed to be done, and I figured out how to provide that service. So when you look at all these policies, there's opportunities to help get this done instead of trying to figure out the government's gonna pay for it because they're running out of money. State runs out of money, we all run out of money.
So that was wonderful. So thanks
Thank
for arranging that. Thanks for allowing us to,
Yeah,
step on your
pleasure.
property.
Seeing it is to believe it.
It was fascinating. All right, super. Any other comments? All right, so then we get to the future agenda. Item C is that the next Climate Emergency Council meeting is scheduled here for Tuesday, October the 22nd at noon.
Okay.
And with that, let's go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Very important.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job, Rob.
Thanks.
Thank you.